Good morning, everybody. I gathered everybody up today to talk about the transition from the 133 to the 135 belt. You guys have all heard the project that we've been working on in PI, and now it's come to fruition. Before we get started, I'm going to hand out these notes for you guys, things that we pulled up in the quality meetings, and just please hand them around the table. And it's going to give you guys some idea of some of the things that we have, covered. Now, what we need to do in this lesson is, when we complete it, we're going to need to be able to do a one voice, or give Brent some ideas for a one voice for both club personnel like employees or user level folks, and then club maintenance or club management type folks, because as you know, we get calls across the whole spectrum. So, some of the things that we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the symptoms in the machine, the treadmill itself. How do you see this problem? The next thing, we're going to talk about the financial impact to both you guys and to PRECOR. We're going to do a visual identification of the belt. You're going to see that I have samples of the 133 belts on the tables in front of you. We're also going to examine root cause of the issue with the 133 belt, and then we're going to look and some of the specs at the samples. Then we're going to look at the updated belt, and then we're going to break down into groups, and we're going to talk about the one voice for Brent, so he can write us up something very eloquent. Okay, this is what we got from the customers. The customers are reporting that the machines are shutting down mid-run. And what we do know is that errors are sometimes reported. So in your expertise, what error do you think that we're seeing most often?
Error 28?
Thank you, Wes. Error 28.
Error 15 maybe?
Possibly. You could see error 15s. It could be a side effect, but error 28 is the primary error that we see. And to refresh everybody, error 28 is one of three things. Frank, can you name what one of the error 28s could possibly be?
Lower board overheating.
Lower board overheating, that's one thing. Tom, do you know another one?
The motor is drawing too much current.
Motor's drawing too much current. And anyway, I'll leave it open. You know, I'll answer the last one for you. The current limiting software in the IFT drive also will drive an error 28. Okay? If there's no error and the machine shuts down, what is the typical symptom that you see there? Anybody? The breaker on the machine itself turns off. Okay? One thing we also know is that the reset of the machine is also needed in every single instance. Reset of the machine, what's that do to the club personnel? What's that do to the users, the club members? Becomes an annoyance. Okay? Next thing we have to talk about is we have to talk about the financial impact. Number one in PRECOR's mind, in everybody's mind, is safety. If we don't take care of the customer and we allow the issue to continue, what could be some of the financial impact due to safety?
Somebody gets hurt, he sues.
Exactly, and that's what we want to avoid completely. PRECOR is always known for doing the right thing. We want to avoid any kind of issues that involve safety or putting people in harm's way, and we will do what it takes to take care of this problem.
So when these machines are shut down, they're stopping more abruptly than coasting?
Yes, sir. And especially the fact that they're slowing down when people are running, so they're going 7, 8, 9 miles an hour. So even if it comes to a coast, it's kind of shocking to the person on there, and they're running so close to the console that they could be running into an issue. Secondly, financially, it impacts us because we're going to have to replace all these belts. And of course, that's going to be monetary. Warranty dollars, extra dollars that we have to get from Tracy. And another secondary cause is sales. Anybody want to figure how that's going to affect sales?
Well, sure. If the word gets around that our treadmills are shutting down all the time, nobody's going to want to buy them.
That is it on the nose. And on a second note, with the PRECOR motto of we will do what it takes to make things right, they'll see that the next time sales comes around and say, hey, PRECOR had some problems, but they stood behind the product. Let's identify the 133 belt. All 133 belts have the new slash design. None of them say PRECOR on them anymore. The sure way to tell if you have a 133 belt is to flip it over or pull the edge up while it's on the machine, and the part number will be printed on the right-hand side, right in front of the seam. Everybody sees clearly 133 belt. And what you also have is the date of manufacturer, which is another great point to make. Let me ask you this while we're on this page. Can you determine if it's a 133 belt simply by looking at the top coat and seeing the slash logo? Anybody?
New belts have the same logos on them, right?
That is correct. So what does that mean?
Can't tell the difference looking at the top.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So are all 133 belts having this issue?
We're going to get to that in a little while. If you don't mind, Tamara, I'm going to park that for a second. We'll talk about the root cause of the issue, and I'll be able to answer that question for you. Not a problem. Thank you for that question, because that is a great question. We have found that the definite contributors are two things. Number one is when we change from the 132 to the 133 belt, we change the weave, the white part on the bottom of the belt. We change the pattern of that to quiet the belt down. We know that that's causing a higher amp draw, which is causing the shutdown issue. We've also found that we have poor process control at Forbo, our belt manufacturer. If you look at the samples that I've put on the desk, you're going to see that you guys are somewhere around, the seam is somewhere around 7 inches wide. I've drawn that out for you, correct? The factory spec, the spec that PRECOR asks for, is 5 inches and under. Secondly, you can see the splice itself. The splice itself that PRECOR calls for is 1/8 of an inch or under. Wes, why don't you tell me what the splice is on the example that you have in front of you?
This one has got a 1/4 inch splice on it.
Thomas, what about on yours?
It's 1/4 of an inch.
So it's two times the length out of spec, and the seam itself is about 2 inches over. And when you get a chance on a break or whatever you want to do, if you feel this seam, you're going to feel that it's sticky. What happens with a sticky belt after somebody runs on it? Frank, why don't you tell us what happens when a belt's sticky and somebody runs on it for a couple of minutes? What happens?
High current,
High current. High current leads to what?
breakers tripping.
Breakers tripping, or?
It hiccups actually, gives a pulse like this, and could cause the runner to stumble.
It could, and besides breaker trip, what else? Tamara?
Error 28?
Error 28, exactly. Now, we do have some possible contributors that we haven't proven out yet. The first one is the IFT drive itself. The current limiting software may or may not be tripping and showing the error 28 at the exact point it's supposed to. It might be happening at 20 amps, it might be happening at 19.5 amps, it might be happening at 22 amps, which explains why sometimes it's a breaker trip and sometimes it's an error 28. Once again, we haven't proven this yet, but we're thinking that it's a contributor. We know these are contributors, we're thinking this is a possible contributor. Also, secondly, we have noticed in all places where this is happening frequently, they have a shared neutral condition on their building wiring. And when a shared neutral condition in the variable frequency drive is what the IFT drive actually is the voltages sag on subsequent machines after the first machine. You guys with electronic knowledge, obviously voltage sag leads to what?
Higher current.
Higher current. Higher current leads to,
Breaker tripping.
or,
Error 28s.
boom. We see it? We got it? Good. Okay?
Are there any specific date codes to look for?
Yes, the 133 was put on the initial machines starting in December of 2009, and they are continuing to be put on the machines to this day. And this simply because we're only seeing a small amount of those failures in those shared neutral conditions, that we're going to use the supply that we have until done, and we'll react later if we should happen to get more of the
So
shutdown.
is that a date code on the machine or a date code on the belt?
That is a date code on the machine. So our solution was to switch to the 135 belt. The 135 belt has the weave changed back to the previous design. Also, the top coat remains the same as the 133 belt, as we talked about earlier. That's why you can't tell the difference between the two. We have a process control in place at Forbo, and we're also doing 100% inspection at PRECOR. It goes to note, if you look at the seam on the belt, you're going to notice that we're at 4.75 inches, well under the 5 inches, and our splice is at about 1/16. Yes, Wes?
So I'm guessing that the inspection is just that, all they can really do is inspect to make sure that the width and the splice are right?
Yes, sir, and then they will also do the hand test to make sure that there's no stickiness to the belt.
Okay.
Okay? So what we need to do as a team is I need to divide you guys into two groups. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put the group 1 guys, I'm going to just assign Brent, Tom, and Tamara over to group 1 since they're closest to this easel. I'm going to assign Frank and Wes over to group 2. And what you guys are going to do, and I'm going to leave this up there for you, is we're going to come up with some one-voice ideas to send up to Brent, send up the technical writing, so that he can come up with a cognitive one voice that everybody can understand, that we can teach the phone text, or we can mention it on the phone ourselves, or more importantly, when we're out in the field and people bring up this issue, hey, the belts are shutting down, what do we do? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the two of you up. I need you guys to write your ideas on the board. And then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss each one. We're going to take the best ideas and then we're going to summarize them together and we're going to get them up to Brent. So the instructions are up here, and basically it's what information you need to obtain from the club, what do you tell the club employee, what would you do, what you ask them to do after they're done speaking to you, when management, what do you want to tell them, and what steps would you take to resolve their issue. Okay? So everybody take the spec sheets and the paperwork I gave to you. Let's get together in your groups and let's start discussing different issues. Tamara and you guys are group 1. Frank and you guys are group 2. Are there any questions before we get started with this exercise? Okay, great. Hit it.
You're closest.
I guess I just have to kind of put this down.
All right, great. So we got, looks like we got lots of great ideas here. All right, let's go with group 1 first. Tom, why don't you explain what you guys came up with? And you guys feel free to jump in if you want to.
What we did, first of all, was to write down just some brainstorming ideas, and then we prioritized them.
Okay.
So what we've got, they're a little mixed up here, but first of all, what we put as item number 1 was to have the employee visually inspect the belt. Make sure we're talking about the correct belt. That's one thing. 2, they're also going to have to get the serial number of that unit that it's on, because that belt could have been installed as a replacement to an earlier model one. Therefore, we need to have the serial number of the unit if we're going to be proactive and replace them. And then, third thing, have the employee contact our dispatch so we can arrange for service.
Okay, those are all great, and I love all of those. Does anybody, I'll throw this out to anybody, anything to add to this? Because this is perfect. When we're talking about club personnel, keep it simple, keep it on a non-technical level, and what's our number 1 concern at PRECOR?
Safety.
Safety. All right, beautiful. This is great. Now, what were your conclusions on this? Anybody from group 1? What were we trying to get across here?
That PRECOR is going to take care of them, no matter what
We're
it is.
taking care of them.
Okay, is there anything that you wish to prevent by doing all of these items here?
Panic.
Exactly. You want to expand on that a little bit, Tom?
Well, we just don't want them to go, oh no, everything's wrong, oh my God, you know, and create mass panic.
Exactly. So by doing this, you're going to have them ID the belt, you're going to have them get the serial number, we're going to get a dispatch on it, 24-hour service will take care of that belt or belts, whatever they have a problem with, and everything then closes. That is absolutely fantastic, guys. And since we have Brent in the room, Brent, you can work at one voice based on this?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Hey, thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it. You have a seat. All right. Wes, looks like you guys came up with a little bit more. Why don't we go over what you wrote?
Okay, well, these aren't necessarily in numeric order here, but as we brainstormed and threw them up here, one of the things that we wanted to do right off the bat is we wanted to assure them that PRECOR was going to respond quickly. We also wanted to explain that PRECOR has discovered that some belts are out of specification, and we are replacing them in all locations.
Okay, and let me stop you right there quickly. Very important point that Wes makes here. Very good, Wes. Because you don't want to say to club management, club owner, higher level maintenance people, the belt has a problem. Because what does that mean? As Tom said earlier,
You panic.
we panic and we want all belts replaced. But if we have some that are out of spec, PRECOR can fix that. Go ahead, Wes.
We want to explain the safety issues involved. We want to let them know that PRECOR is going to be with them 100%, hold their hand all the way through the whole
It's
thing.
the PRECOR way.
And then we want to tell them that the problem is now corrected on the belt and it won't resurface again. And then we want to also reassure them that the units are not damaged by what's been going on and that their warranty is still in full effect.
Beautiful, thank you. Does anybody have anything to add to that? Okay, great. Now Wes, your group, when you were thinking about this, club management and maintenance personnel, these guys are worried about a panic amongst employees and then everything's wrong. Did you guys come up with some sort of conclusion as to why you'd want to take this approach?
We want to reinstill confidence in our customers. We don't want to feel like we've abandoned them. We're not doing anything. That we're completely ignoring the problem. And we want to let them know that always with us, safety is top.
Safety, great point from our chart earlier. Safety, and what other issue does it hit in the financial impact?
Well, we're covering all the costs of the belt replacement. It's not going to hit them at all.
There's your replacement, and what's the third thing? Anybody remember what the third thing was?
Sales.
Sales.
We took care of them.
We took care of that customer. And even though PRECOR ran into a little issue, PRECOR was behind us 100%.
We
Wes,
want to make sure that they know that nothing will resurface, so they don't have to worry that this is something that they'll see in every PRECOR product they build.
Peace of
or
mind.
that they buy.
perfect. Thank you, Wes. I appreciate that. It was great. That is exactly perfect. Have a seat.
Okay.
All right. So, quickly, let's cover the last couple of items. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page, and we're going to turn these ideas into Brent, and he's going to make us a beautiful one voice, a wonderful two-part one voice on this. All right, indication of the issue. How can you tell that this issue is happening in a club? Frank, why don't you tell me?
Because the belts are 133 belts and the unit's shutting down and/or error 28s.
Thank you, which is also a fatal error and shuts the machine down. All right, Tamara, let's talk about the financial impact. What financial impact, and you can go over all three, or you can pick one of the three, does this have on PRECOR?
Well, the financial impact for PRECOR
Mm-hmm.
is that if we take care of the customer the first time and quell their anxiety about all of the treadmills need to be replaced, so we're only doing the ones that are affected and not all of them. So that's
Beautiful.
going to be less for us and better for them.
Exactly. Anybody else want to throw a quick financial out there?
Yeah, on the subject of financial impact, is our belt manufacturer taking on any of this?
Yes, sir, they are, simply because the belt was out of spec, so they will be taking on some of the cost on this. So anyway, quickly with financial, it's also, we're going to handle it safety. We want to prevent lawsuits, number one. And then the last thing is, as you know, we're in business to make money. We are in business to collect bonus checks at the end of the year. We need to make sure that we get sales. So we will take care of this customer fully. And then the last thing is the PRECOR reaction. And let me just go over that myself. Once again, PRECOR is all about doing things right. We've always been about doing things right. You guys jump on airplanes at the last second because you want to do the right thing for the customer. The PRECOR reaction to this will always be, yes, Mr. Customer, we will be there. We will expedite, we will be there ASAP to take care of this issue. Are there any further questions about the 133, the 135, and what we need to get to Brent? Are there anything else? Guess Wes.
Are we bringing back the 133s then if we're turning them in for credit or something to the manufacturer?
Yes, sir, we are bringing the 133 belts back in. We've been bringing them back in for the logo issue, we're now bringing them back in for this issue as well. Okay, guys, thank you for your time. Let's go back to work.